RevOpsAF, the only podcast for people who are RevOpsAF and want to learn all about things that are RevOpsAF.
Our goal is to give the revenue operations community, that includes marketing, sales, and CS, for any of you not paying attention, the skills needed to accelerate their careers.
Revenue teams today run on data, but not all data is created equal. RevOps leaders know this better than anyone. Bad inputs equal bad decisions. That's why we're excited to partner with HG Insights, the leading provider of revenue growth intelligence, helping companies with go-to-market strategy to execution with precision. HG Insights gives revenue operators the visibility we've all been begging for. A unified view of market demand, technographics that identify what tools companies are using, spend intelligence showing exactly where money is flowing, account potential scoring for smarter targeting, and accurate TAM and segmentation models grounded in real-world signals. If you're supporting go-to-market planning, if you're architecting territories, if you're fueling pipeline with higher quality accounts, HG Insights becomes your new competitive advantage. No more guessing, no more stitched-together spreadsheets and toggling between systems, just real, validated, decision-grade intelligence. Learn more at hginsights.com. Once again, that's hginsights.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RevOpsAF, the podcast where we sit down with people who are RevOpsAF to talk all about things that are RevOpsAF. I am your co-host, Matthew Volm, CEO and founder of RevOps Co-op, a community of 20,000 plus revenue operators from all across the globe. And today we are sitting down with Jared Myatt, who is a senior director of revenue operations over at Integrate. And we are going to be talking all about the soft skills that separate good RevOps leaders from great ones. So Jared, welcome, my friend. Thank you for being here. Before we get into the topic of the day, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey into revenue operations as well?
Yes. Thank you, Matt, for having me. So, yeah, it's been a journey. I didn't always want to be a revenue operator. I studied film and business in college.
Natural combination.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to work on movies and write screenplays and all that stuff. And after working on a couple of movies, I quickly learned that the 12, 13-hour days just wasn't my jam, and I wanted something a little bit more stable. Luckily, I was able to get my foot in the door at a tech company, and I kind of worked my way up, and I've been very grateful to be with that same company today. So yeah, my journey's been crazy. I've worn a lot of different hats, as they say. I've worked as an analyst. I've been in just a sales ops role, biz ops. It seems like the words change every 3 years, but yeah, I've grown into kind of running our revenue operations and working with a lot of different departments. So it's a lot of fun. I'm learning every day, and yeah, I'm excited for what the future will bring.
Yeah. So you've been at Integrate for 13 plus years now.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is it the only company you've worked for post college, basically?
You almost. So I actually, right out of college, I did work for Target, their corporate division, and I worked in a call center. I was kind of just doing customer success and people yelling at me for late fees and forgetting their PIN numbers.
Yeah.
So I didn't really like that. So
I mean, it sounds great. Sounds really fun.
Was it super fun? So I was there for a year and a half, which is a lot longer than I thought I would last. But yeah, I worked there for a bit, and then a girl I went to college and high school with, she sort of referred me to Integrate, and I was able to get an interview. And it's funny because I started in, the department doesn't exist anymore, but it was the account approvals department. Yeah. And so I was basically just vetting all the different people and companies that wanted to buy and sell leads in our marketplace, and I was collecting W-9s and doing reference checks and all that stuff. So yeah, that's where I started.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because you've had a large number of roles within Integrate, and obviously takes, I think, a special person, a special company to be there for that long. And so we could save maybe the corporate culture stuff for a different episode, because I'm sure we can get into a lot of the good things that happen there. But You have been in a lot of different roles at Integrate. Now you are leading revenue operations. And so you obviously have your own set of skills, your own background, your own experiences. You have teammates, right? You've seen the background, the skills, the things that other people bring to the table. And so I want to start by asking you, what do you think the biggest skill gap is that exists within revenue operations today that people are not talking about? Because it'll be easy to say things like AI or Salesforce expertise or SQL or whatever, right? But what's the biggest gap that people are not talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me personally, I think it's humility mixed with self-awareness. When I say that, it's being able to know when you're wrong and pivot, right? So I think working in RevOps, we're very close to a lot of the internal processes, the technologies. We're the ones kind of doing the building, and we're in the nitty-gritty every single day. So I think it's very easy to kind of get attached to a lot of the stuff that's going on. And so I think it's natural, again, for us to be like, no, this is the right way to do this because of X, Y, and Z, and then just not thinking of any other perspective or way to do something. So I think when I say humility, it's basically, okay, when you're doing something and you see it's not working, being able to kind of take it on the chin and be like, okay, this is not the right approach. Let's reassess, let's pivot, let's take another approach and try to make this work. So yeah, I think when it comes to soft skills, I think it's just being super self-aware, not being too entrenched in it, and kind of being humble enough to know when something is wrong and be able to make that change.
Yeah. I always tell people as I reflect on my career, and I just turned 40 this year, so I crossed a big milestone, but that naturally causes you to when you enter a new decade, you start to reflect, right? And you start to think a lot more. Yeah. And I know what you're hitting on really resonates. For me, it's always like I wish I did this earlier, but it's give yourself permission to change your mind and approach these things. And I learned from a boss I had previously how to not handle stuff where they would always come at me with stuff where it was very much like right versus wrong. It was like who's right, who's wrong, not what did we learn from this or how should we move forward to do what's best for the business. And I think when you approach things that way, the only failure is if you failed to learn something. So in all those examples you gave, it's like if you're trying stuff and it's not working, it's like learn from that and then try something else, right? Like that's okay. Like you will never bat 1,000. You will not be 100% of everything that you do, right? Like that's just not the way that it's going to work. So learn something, and I think if you fail to learn, that's the failure, right? It's not the fact that something didn't work.
100%. And that's an everyday thing in being ops. You have to be comfortable with failing, right? That comes with the gig. So if you're able to kind of set yourself apart from that and learn from that, I think you're golden.
Yeah. All right, now I'm going to ask you for stories. And I know this is actually one of the things that, again, I've also learned. So when was this? This was like 2017 to 2019. I was working on my first startup, and we raised a little bit of money. We brought a product to market, had some paying customers, never found product market fit, eventually ran out of money, had to wind the business down. And so I'm like, all right, I got to go out. I got to look for a job. And so when I first started looking, I did not want to mention anything about this company that I had tried to build because I was like, it didn't work, right? It didn't work. I had to shut things down. But then what I realized was that I had all these learnings from that experience that I could now share. And that actually people loved hearing that story. People love hearing stories. And so I bring that up because I want to hear stories from you about things that maybe you've gotten wrong, or how have you learned from some of the advice even that you're now giving. Tell us some examples of stuff that you've gotten wrong, maybe within revenue operations. What did you learn from it? How did you course correct? How did you move forward and produce a better outcome?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's hard because I'm perfect. No, I'm just kidding.
There's just so many examples.
There's so many examples, exactly. No, I think, before I do that, I just want to double click on what you just said, because I think that's really important, because especially if you're doing an interview or anything like that, I feel like if you're trying to look too perfect, it almost is, it does the opposite of what your intention is, right? People want to hear those kind of chaotic stories and how you handled them, right? So yeah, I'm trying to think again. I've been here forever, and there's been a lot of different things that have either broken or gone wrong in my 13 years at Integrate. I think a recent example, this isn't the most exciting story, but we were evaluating vendors for call recording software. And so I won't say names, but you can kind of do it yourself. But basically, we were looking to save some money, and we still want to record calls and all that stuff. And I was very gung-ho about a very specific tool, and I did a lot of evaluation, and I had a lot of calls with the people that work there. And I was very just kind of, no, this is the solution. We're going to save this much money. It's going to be great. It can connect to our Salesforce, do all of this stuff and more than what our current solution does. And everyone was convinced, and we were ready to go. And then kind of pretty far down the line, I found out like 2 or 3 pretty critical pieces to our business that we needed, they couldn't support. And so it was one of those things where it's like, I mentioned it in our early discussions, and it's no one's fault really. It was just maybe a miscommunication or whatever. But I realized, oh crap, I was so gung-ho about this and everyone's on board, and now it's like, we can't do these 2 or 3 things that's like critical for our business. We can't buy this software today. So that was one where it's like I had to swallow my own ego and be like, okay, this isn't going to work for us. I'm going to have to go back to senior leadership and present all of my findings and tell everyone what's what. And honestly, again, like I think this happens with any sort of human, but the first sort of reaction is like, oh crap, like everyone's going to be so ticked off, right? Everyone's going to assume we wasted so much time and they're going to be mad at me and I don't know what I'm doing. But the reality is that people are grateful. Yeah. Senior leadership was like, oh, great, good thing you caught that. We didn't sign anything, so we're fine, and we still have X amount of time until the renewals. I think that's just one example where it's like, I was very gung-ho, and it's like, I thought this, I had my assumptions, and then it's boom, out of left field, these things that I just assumed were good to go, they weren't, and I kind of had to go back and reassess. And it wasn't the end of the world. So yeah, I think just to kind of circle back on all of it, it's really just, it kind of just goes back to like just being honest, really. Just kind of being honest with yourself, being honest with the business. And I think people will respect that if you have the business's best interests at heart. So yeah, that's one of many examples I can think of.
Yeah. And I've learned this myself now too, especially if stuff like that pops up. I now want to run directly at those problems as fast as I possibly can so that I can get on the other side. Because if you do delay any longer, it's not going to go away. And it's also not going to get better. So if you come across things like that in your role of revenue operations, but also just generally, I think I always tell this to my kids too, it's run as fast as you can at your problems. Straight at them, straight at your mistakes. Run through the wall because you want to be on the other side. Trust me, you want to get over the hump as fast as you can.
Yes.
So next thing I want to ask you on is, obviously you've navigated your career within Integrate pretty successfully in terms of moving up and through and on all these different teams and now into kind of leading revenue operations. People in revenue operations, you obviously need to get buy-in from executives, from CROs, from marketing VPs, sales VPs, you name it, right? Yep. And there's certainly right ways to go about this, and I don't want to say wrong ways, but there's better and worse ways to approach these sorts of interactions. Again, when you as an operator are trying to get buy-in or sign off on something, even a certain piece of technology or tool, like the example that you just gave. So do you have any sort of playbook or advice that you would give people on influencing leadership, revenue team, leadership, executive team leadership when it comes to needing to get their buy-in or sign off on things as a revenue operator?
Yeah, I think it's really important to first show the data if you can. I'm a very visual person, but if you're able to show stats or evidence of what you are presenting or trying to get your point across, it's really hard to argue that, right? If you're showing concrete data to people, that is always a really good first step. Second, I think it's really important to be concise, especially when you're talking to senior leadership. Don't ramble, get to the point, right? If you ever see an email or an instant message from a CEO or a CFO, it's always 3 or 4 words. It's one sentence sent from your iPhone, right?
Yeah, so there's no punctuation, there's no capitalization. Like, this is how I do emails and everything now. Yeah. It drives my wife crazy because she's a lawyer who basically writes for a living. And she's like, I cannot believe that you interact with your customers and your members and all these people that way. And I'm like, listen, lady, I do not have enough time in the day to be able to use a capital letter or a period at the end of my sentences.
Exactly. So, it's just get to the point, right? Just say what you're trying to say, be concise about it. And if they have questions, they will ask questions. I think the last part of that too, I always try to get ahead of those questions. So anytime I'm having some sort of conversation with ELT or senior leadership, and there's something that I'm trying to present or a certain point of view that I think is important for them to know, I always try to get ahead of any sort of questions that they might ask me, write them down and just answer them. And then just like when I'm presenting that stuff to them, just answering them right then and there. And if they have other questions, great. That means they're invested, they're interested, and they're like in the conversation. But yeah, I think just those 3 things really, for me, it's just showing data, being concise, and then answering any potential questions that might pop up.
Yeah. And the concise piece, I'm thinking back to even when I was early on in my career, and some things that I learned that can be uncomfortable in the moment. So on your comment on brevity and being concise and kind of getting to the point is, especially with these interactions with senior leaders, is that silence is okay. Yeah. If you say something, to your point, be concise and use brevity, right? Get your point across, then literally stop talking. Yeah. And if they don't say anything, that doesn't mean you need to. Right? Yeah. You can be quiet. You've said your thing. Let them process, because they will ask a question. And if you've prepared for that question, you have an answer, or you've gotten ahead of it, right? That will make you look even better. But yes, be concise, use brevity. The silence does not need to be awkward. It is actually okay. And it's just part of the conversation. It's part of the interaction, right?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I should have paused there, actually. That would have been for 10 seconds. No, I just want to say that is such a great point, because I remember, again, I've been at Integrate forever, but I started running our forecast calls probably a decade ago. But I would always, when I first started running them, there would be those silent moments, and we'd have our CEO, our CFO, our head of sales, our head of marketing, and I would just try to fill it, because I would just be so awkward, and try to fill it with just me rambling and I got good advice again early in my career. Thankfully, it's like, no, just let it breathe. If there's a conversation, it will naturally arise, but count to 6 or 7 or whatever the heck the number is. But yeah, that's a really good point, because your internal voice is saying, no, you have to talk, you have to fill the silence.
Yeah. I know. I'm even thinking back to, there's this one, I was working at I was in strategic finance at the time, and I was working at this large health insurance company. That was when I was living in Portland, Oregon. There's one executive, I think his name was Jared. He was the COO, and I remember I was pronouncing, or I was like pitching this project, right? And there were so many times when I'd get through a slide, right? Be like, any questions? And just sitting there in silence was like so weird. Weird. It felt so weird. But I forced yourself to do it, and it resulted in, it was the outcome I wanted. He approved the thing, said it was good, told me I did a good job. I also had a CFO at that same company who I remember writing these really long, very verbose emails to, and then you get a response back that's just THX, And I'm just like,
yeah, TY, yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my God, did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like,
am I gonna get fired? Yeah.
Yeah, but the answer is no. The fact that he responded with that is the pat on your back, thumbs up, good job that you needed, right?
Yeah.
No response would have been the bad thing. So
right.
Again, and some of this comes with experience, some of it comes with just understanding the way that these people tick, what makes them operate, right? And it's super important for someone who's navigating their career.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right, so one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know if you've ever felt like you've been maybe not trapped in a box, but if you've been relegated to the CRM person or the analytics person or the systems person or whatever. So if there's people out there who feel like maybe they're in that box, right? Like they're the CRM person, for example, what habits, what things could they start doing today to help them grow beyond that, to help them build beyond that, to help them tell a better story, for them to release themselves from the box that they feel trapped in?
From the shackles, yeah. It's a good question. I guess the first step I would say is to make it a point to have conversations with a lot of different people in different departments and just start asking questions. Understand the whole business, right? So if you're looking to expand your scope in revenue operations and you're just seen as like a Salesforce admin, talk to someone in customer success and be like, hey, can you just 30 minutes run me through your day? What are the things that drive you nuts? What is the stuff that's working? What do you wish could be better? Talk to a salesperson. You don't even have to go to the head of the snake, right? Talk to the people that are doing the work. Pick a sales rep, pick a CSM, talk to an accountant, see if how their billing process is, if it like drives them nuts or their collector or whatever. Gather information around the business and the people doing the work. I think that's step one, to just get a holistic view of all the different things that are happening. And then I would say just start like crafting a point of view and a perspective on how you can make things better. And tell that to your manager, honestly. And if your manager is a good manager, like, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but if your leader is like thoughtful and actually looking to get feedback, they will love that. If you come to them and be like, hey, I talked to Joe in customer success and he told me that he hates going into Salesforce and filling out these fields because it wastes 10 minutes of his day. And if we could figure out how to automate that, and then I have this plan to do X, Y, and Z. I think that was a Salesforce example, so maybe if you're an admin, don't do that, but just thinking outside the box, like talking to other people, getting other perspectives, and then just troubleshooting and start talking about it, like putting it out in the universe. And I think people will start seeing you definitely as more than an admin, and you will start, I think, getting more responsibilities because people will start having these conversations and maybe implementing your ideas.
Yeah, if you are feeling stuck or trapped a little bit in any box in your RevOps role, let's just use the CRM box as the example. Mm-hmm. To your point, and I always tell people this too, I never like to say things with certainty. 99% of the time, no one's going to come to you with other stuff to do. And your career is yours, and it is in your hands. And if you are looking to break out of the box, then it's going to be your job to do it. And the way that you can do it is with some things that you just mentioned, right? Especially if you work at a company that is large enough where you have other teams, you may not know everybody, right? Do exactly what you just mentioned. Go make friends at other teams and just start asking questions like that. Because I'm guessing, even looking at the different roles that you've had at Integrate, right? You mentioned this department that doesn't exist, but it's like account approvals associate, head of account approvals, credit and business analyst, then senior analyst of RevOps, then senior manager of RevOps, then director of RevOps, now senior director of RevOps, right? So you've crossed these different teams, these different functions, and I'm guessing, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing you didn't just sit in your lane or your role and just say, okay, these are my problems to solve, and I'm just going to go out and solve these problems. Yeah. I'm guessing you probably had some of those conversations, and you knew some people on some other teams, because how else are they going to know that Jared's the guy to help them solve some of these other problems if he hasn't come to them and they don't know who you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good point, and a lot of this kind of falls into overall life philosophy, I feel like. But you're absolutely right. No one, not to be too dramatic, but yeah, no one's gonna come save you. You need to take the ball and run with it and carve out your own path because, yeah, I don't know. I always say most people, pretty much everyone is just thinking about themselves, right? Most days, right? People aren't really thinking about how they can make Jared's career better or how can Jared get promoted. People aren't thinking that, and if that sounds harsh, I'm sorry, but you got to go out and do the work and prove out what you want the role to be. And I think the results will just follow. Another thing I'll just add to that, don't get too enamored with the future results, right? If you're doing the right things, if you're learning from your mistakes, if you're quick to adapt, the results will inevitably follow, right? So yeah, I think it's a really good, important point. Just kind of take the ball and run with it.
Yeah. And the thing I'll add to what you just mentioned, and I don't know if you have some of these experiences. I know I do for sure, but like you mentioned, I think a friend that kind of helped you get an interview or something at Integrate, but like, do you ever look back and like this friend, I have no idea how you met them or if it was like kind of a random like sort of experience, but I think back to just a couple of like key moments within my career, and there are these seemingly like random things that happen that lead to the friendship, that leads to the interview or whatever it might be. And so my point with all of that is that like obviously like I'm sure whenever you became friends with this person, like you probably had zero expectation that they were going to help you get an interview somewhere or help you with a job, right? And I know as I reflect on like some moments like in my career that are similar, it's the same thing, like zero expectation around like these kind of random events that ultimately lead to these outcomes. And so my point with all of this is that you kind of look back at that and you're like, man, that was just kind of lucky, right? That like that's the way that things that shook out. And like I think the answer is yes, it is luck. But hey, guess what? Like you need to exist to be lucky, and you can put yourself in situations to get lucky. So the more situations you put yourself in, the more chances you have. And to your point on having some of those conversations with other team members across marketing, sales, accounting, finance, wherever it is, you may have, and you probably should have, zero expectations going into those conversations, setting up those meetings beyond just wanting to learn about the person and the role and the things that we do. But it could very well be one of those conversations where that person is going to be the next VP of sales or the next CRO, and then guess who they're going to want to be their RevOps leader. Like there's so many of those things that can happen, and invest in your time there to put yourself in as many scenarios as possible where you can get lucky and have those seemingly random things lead to beneficial outcomes is super, super important.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
All right, my friend, do you have any lasting advice, lasting feedback, lasting for folks who might be listening to this? What would be one thing you want to leave them with as they maybe navigate their career? Especially, actually, this might be a record. I don't know if we've mentioned AI yet on this,
I was just gonna say.
on this podcast.
I love that.
The world is certainly changing. Revenue operations is certainly changing. So especially in this AI world, like any last piece of feedback or advice for people as they navigate their career in RevOps?
Gosh, I guess the only advice I could give is just keep learning, keep your mind open. Things change like crazy. Yeah, even 5 years ago, right? Before this whole AI boom, things are always going to change, and you just have to be adaptable. And I guess it's more of just like a mindset and a way to just approach revenue operations if that's what you're interested in. Be open to learning constantly, be open to changing things, be open to building a lot of relationships. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Build relationships across a breadth of different departments across your org, and I think if you're able to do that, you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I love it. From film and business all the way to revenue operations, such a natural career progression, my friend.
Exactly.
I really appreciate you being on the podcast, Jared. Thank you for sharing your journey and dropping some knowledge on everybody today. But that is all that I have for you, my friend. So with that, I'll let you run.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode, everybody.
For more great content like this, join our community at RevOpsCoop.com and check out the links provided in the show notes.
Keep it RevOps safe, y'all.